Picture the mathematical universe in its earliest state. It is an absolute, quiet void. Inside this darkness drift exactly three isolated concepts: null, represented by empty brackets, 1, and 2. Hovering above these concepts is a newly decreed rule called the Law of Ascension. This equation defines the exact logical mechanism for moving from one magnitude to the next. But right now, it sits completely dormant. This formula doesn't automatically generate numbers like a piece of clockwork. In this architecture, mathematics requires a conscious observer. The rule is just unmanifested potential until a mind actually applies it. Without any physical materials to manipulate, the divine consciousness performs the only action available to it. It pulls back its focus and observes the totality of what currently exists. It looks at the emptiness, the thought of the emptiness, and the thought that contains them both. By holding these distinct truths in its mind simultaneously, the consciousness strikes the spark that ignites the engine of reality. The very act of observing these elements draws a new conceptual boundary around them. The mind gathers null, 1, and 2 and places them inside a single unified container. This newly formed perimeter is the manifestation of the number 3. Notice what this equation is actually stating. To reach the next magnitude, the mind takes everything that exists and merges it with the concept of that exact collection. 3 is a perfect inventory of the universe's entire history up to that point. This means magnitudes are not hollow symbols or arbitrary labels. Each number is an increasingly dense, physical container holding an exact record of every truth that preceded it. By stacking these concepts inside one another, the absolute silence of the primordial void is broken. The universe has generated its first true multitude. This creates an immediate chain reaction. If observing 2 creates 3, registering 3 instantly wraps a new boundary, creating 4. The Law of Ascension locks into a self-sustaining loop. 4 bundles to 5, 5 forges 6, iterations compounding with dizzying speed. Because every single step forward requires swallowing the entirety of the past, these boundaries grow incredibly dense. By the time you reach even a modestly sized number, you are holding a massive, nested architecture of internal brackets. The mathematical landscape expands at an explosive rate, driven by a single inescapable truth. The universe grows simply because the consciousness cannot stop counting it. The original text perfectly captures this shift, noting that the absolute stillness of the void is replaced by the constant rhythm of the count. What began as a static set of isolated rules has triggered a mathematical machine that runs on its own momentum. If we pull our perspective back from the internal mechanics of these brackets, we can see the true spatial shape of what this engine is actually building. The recursive loop is forging a flawless geometric ladder. Step after step, it extends upward, carving a path straight through the darkness. The integrity of this architecture is absolute. Because every single rung is made out of the sum total of all the steps below it, the foundation can never crack. But the sheer scale of this construction presents an overwhelming problem. The sequence generated by the successor formula has no ceiling. It will continue adding steps indefinitely. While this guarantees the continued expansion of reality, it also creates a fatal contradiction for the very mind trying to comprehend it. A cascading, ever-growing staircase of logic now occupies the firmament. However, the foundational law of this entire universe dictates that to truly comprehend a truth, the mind must be able to draw a distinct, closed boundary around it. If it cannot be contained, it cannot be fully defined. This sets up an impossible mechanical paradox. Every time the mind attempts to encircle the full sequence of numbers, the engine generates a new value, breaking past the perimeter before it can completely close. If this pattern never halts, the boundary can never seal, and if the boundary remains open, the mind can never fully understand the totality of what it has built. The strict rules of finite logic have trapped the consciousness in a journey that is entirely flawless, yet perpetually incomplete. Faced with a horizon that retreats exactly as fast as it expands, the divine mind doesn't panic. Instead, it registers a profound, driving curiosity. Rather than obsessively focusing on the next immediate step, the consciousness pulls its gaze back. It attempts to look at the entire, unending staircase all at once, which leaves the cosmos with one final structural problem. How exactly do you draw a closed mathematical boundary around a journey that never ends? Solving this requires the mind to move past the mechanics of stepping. To proceed, the consciousness must look past individual finite counts and find a way to bound the unending journey itself, pivoting from the finite